Okay. So I'm so happy to see everyone here. I recognize some familiar faces or names rather. So if you want to wave and start your video, that would be really nice. So my session is cultivating connection and belonging through book kits. And I've been busy in the last few years working and putting together and collaborating with colleagues on these projects. So I want to encourage you to explore the slides, and I've uploaded them to the session page, and encourage you to read and click on all the links there. I'll drop a couple links in the chat later on, so you can, if you want to check out what the kits look like, you can do that. So I'll start my share and see. All right, so cultivating connection and belonging through book kits. So, in putting together this presentation, I really needed to go back to the source of what our mission and vision are for the Hawaii State Public Library System. And the mission and vision and strategic planning has been revamped, and we now have this more clarity on what direction we want to go in and what our mission is. So, our new mission statement is the Hawaii State Public Library System inspires curiosity and creates opportunities for all to read, learn, and connect. And our vision statement says nourished minds, thriving Hawaii communities, enriched generations. And I notice a few words that definitely resonate and align with what I've experienced and been reflecting on in the last few years. And those words are belong, curiosity, connect, and thriving. And these words all stand out when I think about what I envision for myself personally and professionally. The last few years have really, the events of the last few years, as we all have experienced, I'm sure, they forced me to really clarify what my core values are and taught me to really discern what is within my sphere of influence and what is not. And at the core, in my personal and most especially my professional life, I concluded that I connect people with information and also strive to connect to their own humanity. And I continue to question and evaluate and get curious about what it takes to strive for connection, belonging, and understanding, both as a librarian and as a human being, essentially. So, with that in mind, I wanted to kind of get your input on some of these questions. The first one, they're all big questions, so I don't expect they could all be dissertations, is what does it mean to connect? And you could just drop in the chat, what you think of as in terms of, your profession, most especially, what does connection mean to you? And while you think about that, I did want to look up some sort of definition. And I found one that I really was drawn to from the Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley, which studies the psychology, sociology, and neuroscience of well being and teaches skills that foster a thriving, resilient, and compassionate society. And from their website, quoting, they say when researchers refer to the concept of social connection, they mean the feeling that you belong to a group and generally feel close to other people. Scientific evidence strongly suggests that this is a core psychological need essential to feeling satisfied with your life. And I really liked that definition, it resonated a lot. And part of that definition is the word feeling, which we'll get to later, because that's been a big piece of inspiration for the kits that I've helped to create. And let me just, can I see the chat? Oh, cool. Okay. So connection to me means mutual sharing and learning, totally. Connect. In my workspace, I think about collaboration and shared goals. Connection is meaningful and multi-directional between myself or my program and other people, entities, and organizations. I saw this presentation that talks about a recent Surgeon General's report regarding the pandemic and talking about the importance of human connections. It affects people's health. Danielle says connection for me brings up the idea of commonality, seeing connections between our goals and ideas when they may not be seen at first. And so you can see that connection it's when we stop to really think about what it means, it really blossoms into this unending opportunity for uh, really envisioning and actually seeing that we already do that in our jobs. Um, and give us ourselves credit, for how much we do this in our work. Oh, yep. And Sherry says interaction, which allows for conversation and learning. So switching over to the word belong, what does it mean to belong? So you can just jot out whatever thoughts that come to you. But I also looked at the same Greater Good Science Center at UC Berkeley, and they have a Othering and Belonging Institute, which sounds really interesting. And a quote from the definition of belonging says, in Maslow's famous hierarchy of needs, belongingness sits just above basic physiological requirements like nourishment and safety. Perhaps the clearest acknowledgement that belonging is a fundamental need for all of us. So when we think of the word belong, we can also think of the word identity, right? How does identity come into play with feeling a sense of connection and belonging? Um, and so then I had to look up the definition of identity, which, according to the American Psychological Association, is an individual's sense of self defined by a set of physical, psychological, and interpersonal characteristics that is not wholly shared with any other person, and a range of affiliations such as ethnicity and social roles. Identity involves a sense of continuity or the feeling that one is the same person today that one was yesterday or last year, despite physical or other changes. Such a sense is derived from one's body sensations, one's body image, and the feeling that one's memories, goals, values, expectations, and beliefs belong to the self, also called personal identity. So, oh, cool. Okay, Selena said, or Selena, Kapuna once told me that a person belongs in the place they malama. So as long as we malama all the places and communities we enter, we belong. That is beautiful. And it's true, kind of drawing upon our opening speakers talk, the words that I wrote down, Pilina connection. Uh, she talked about safe spaces and connectedness as part of health and well-being, which is really the conclusion that I came to for the last question, which asks, how does this all connect with health and well-being? And in the course of writing a grant for these kits, in the course of the soul searching and the self-education and professional development that I was compelled and motivated to do on my own during the pandemic, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter movement, and just a greater awareness of how we have always been interconnected, right? And so really caring for the land and for the people in our communities is part of a much greater purpose. And sometimes we can suffer from, in terms of our own well-being, some of us, and I've experienced this idea of vocational awe, but the point is that we do need to evaluate ourselves and our institutions and the systems that are in place, right, in order to see if this is truly helping, is it truly helping and connecting us with the people that we serve? So these are just questions to consider. Thank you all for contributing in the chat. You may continue to do so. This session is meant for me to help facilitate connection and to really, I long for that. So these words connect, belonging, health, and well-being all lead me into the research because we're librarians, right? We have to research and we have to know, you know, that something's been studied for it to be legitimate. And I've learned that intuitively I have this understanding and knowing, but as a librarian professionally, I think in terms of, gathering the data. And an important aspect of the research behind these book kits has been social emotional learning, which is now ubiquitous, right? It's embedded everywhere, which is fabulous. My own children attend a DOE school and they have it as part of their curriculum. They actually have an SEL assessment, which was like, interesting. But I love this graphic, and it's from the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, which is a fount of research and advocacy and knowledge about social emotional learning. And this graphic really is highlighting, at the core, the different in the middle, self-awareness, self-management, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness are the components of their definition of social and emotional learning. And then radiating out are all the spaces in which we can embed social emotional learning through instruction, classroom climate, and then school-wide culture, practices and policies, and then authentic partnerships with families and caregivers, and then aligned learning opportunities in communities. So this gave me great perspective and sort of this idea that, yeah, libraries are part of this. We are safe spaces. We are embedded in our communities, and we do, as a matter of course, cultivate authentic partnerships and really try to align learning opportunities, right? Because we have so much to offer in that regard, and partnering with people is so important. And I'll mention that later on in the presentation. But I did want to say that their definition of social emotional learning is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals. Feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain supportive relationships, and make responsible and caring decisions. SEL advances educational equity and excellence through authentic school, family, community partnerships to establish learning environments and experiences that feature trusting and collaborative relationships, rigorous and meaningful curriculum and instruction, and ongoing evaluation. SEL can help address various forms of inequity and empower young people and adults to co-create thriving schools and contribute to safe and healthy and just communities. So this definition is all-encompassing, and I wanted to point out that they do have a statement on their website and a whole bunch of resources on how SEL must be understood through an equity framework, which Castle describes as transformative SEL, which makes explicit issues such as power, privilege, prejudice, discrimination, social justice, empowerment, and self-determination. So with that definition in mind, I promise all these ideas will come together into a book kit. Okay, now the other piece of the research too is this realization and validation of reading for your well-being. And I think we all know this, but I think because of just the stressors on life that, pandemic, climate change, political divisiveness, the list goes on and on. So many stressors, and this idea of how we deal with grief and cultivate resiliency and these things that are just overwhelming, right? But I know that I find comfort, and so do the people that come into the library, in story, in whatever iteration that is, in a book, in an audiobook, oral storytelling, all of these forms and expressions of story. So I really recommend The Gift of Story, Exploring the Affective Side of the Reading Life by John Shu. Um, this really helped me in my research and just affirming, as he says, books can be the perfect prescriptions that let us know we're going to be okay. We give students access to these lifelines and leave room for magic. And John Shu is a school librarian, and he's fantastic, a great advocate and author. And then another quote from The Gift of Story is this long quote, but really also very validating to me, by Dr. Sayanti Dasgupta. And she says, health in its fullest definition is a sense of wholeness, an ability to move through this world knowing you and yours are loved, valued, and celebrated. Librarians, not to mention teachers, coaches, neighbors, friends, anyone who has the opportunity to share stories and celebrate reading with young people, are then also in the business of health. Stalking, reading, sharing, recommending, and celebrating stories in which all our children can see themselves are practices of healing, a way to write a healthier future for our world into being. And finally, this book is newly published, and I have a copy. I sent it to cataloging. It's The Librarian's Guide to Bibliotherapy, which is a term that I've been very deeply interested in and haven't been able to fully immerse myself in. But a quote from this book says, bibliotherapy simply refers to the use of books from a list created under the guidance of a subject expert to address a therapeutic need or boost wellness in any active or passive way. And that may sound familiar to those of us who, make, book lists, LibGuides, book displays. We are accidental bibliotherapists, but this book really, if anyone wants to read this together, I would love to, because it does address the concerns we have, because we aren't mental health professionals by any stretch. Although people think, they can tell us their whole life story, and we there's a lot of TMI going on sometimes. But ultimately, this book so far has given me comfort that we can venture into this realm, and have clear boundaries on what we can do for people and when we have to, refer them to a professional. All right, so let's dive into the book kits. The first book kits I'm going to talk about is the Conscious Child Family Book Discussion Kits. But then we'll follow that with the Growing My Garden Keiki Self-Care Toolkit. All right, so the Conscious Child book kits have been in circulation for at least a year, maybe even 2 years. Yeah, at least a year. I posted this April of 2022. Right now they're at Wailuku Library, the Bookmobile, Holo Holo Bookmobile, Kihei and Makwa libraries on Maui. And they've been circulating, and I've been getting some good feedback. We have a survey, but essentially the books aim to celebrate diverse voices, help facilitate family discussions about identity, self-love, belonging, racial equity, and justice. And included in each kit are discussion questions, which come in this little laminated packet, and a list of further recommended reading, which shout out to everyone at the time that helped contribute to these book lists, which are available at this link here, which I'll also drop in the chat. Oh, yes, Danielle, thank you for posting Castle. And then I just put in the link for the growing, oh, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. Anyway, it's this link. I'll post it later. But the conception of this idea was from the Oxford Lane Library, who actually created this logo. And I have the link to the Web Junction article, I believe, in the slides, but that was the inspiration. I was like, oh, someone's doing this and I want to do it too. And that's a perfect example of what conferences and professional development opportunities can provide. And so I contacted the librarian at Oxford Lane, and she was so excited that we wanted to replicate it. And we've almost to the letter used a lot of their recommendations, but also tried to incorporate more Native Hawaiian titles or books that centered uh, characters that may be more familiar to kids growing up here in Hawaii, which is kind of a challenge for me, and I'll explain later. And the Maui Friends of the Library, you're super generous and funded, in addition to the network of the National Library of Medicine, funded these kits. So you can look in more detail later, but we did kits for ages 4 to 7, which is on the left. And then I did with Chad Holbrin, the Lahaina librarian. We both collaborated on these. And we came up with kits for ages 8 and older, 8 to 11 or 12. But really, the age limits, I personally don't feel, it's up to really the caregiver or parent to decide that. But these I don't have an online presence for yet in terms of book lists. So that's been kind of waylaid, but we've been circulating these kits and collecting feedback. And then, so of course, I mentioned the inspiration was the Oxford Lane Library's book discussion kits. So I use, with permission, their logo, and I presented it at different conferences and have gotten really, some good feedback and excitement. And of course, the seminal books are Windows, Mirrors, Windows, and Sliding Glass Doors. I don't know if I knew of Rudine Sims Bishop until I started really doing my own self-education. And her foundational essay, as I'm sure many of you know, is so foundational to efforts to diversify. She's considered the mother of multicultural literature. And so I dove into researching her work and her life. And this is really the foundation of why we need to create these opportunities, right? And I'm sure I'm a broken record and preaching to the choir. But this graphic from 2018 really demonstrates how far we have to go still, although I think we're experiencing a renaissance in children's literature that is absolutely fantastic in terms of diversity and featuring and centering various different, not different, I should say, unique perspectives, because it's so critical that a child can see his or her or their selves in a book, right? And there's just no getting around how important that can be. And it's really our responsibility, my responsibility professionally, to be able to maintain a collection that does represent the real world and represents the children everywhere, not just children that can see themselves, but that can experience and perhaps even step into the worlds of other cultures and perspectives. So I looked again, and the Cooperative Children's Book Center, whose statistics were reflected in the previous slide, also has an updated slide in terms of the 3,451 books that they've received and reviewed, published in 2022. And comparing the two numbers, it looks like the numbers are slightly getting more, are adjusting or going up, but it's still, there's a ways to go, I think, in terms of making sure that, literature really does reflect the world that we live in. And so I wanted to also mention Diverse Book Finder, which I've presented on before. And if you're interested, you can contact me about it. It's another tool with which to evaluate your picture book collection. So it's very specific to picture books. And I just wanted to give a plug for that resource. And I also want to give a shout out to, I just got this email, which I'm so excited about, the A Nui Nui Hawaii Keiki Book Award. Sorry, there's 2 awards there. Um, and I was fortunate to listen in on one of the committee meetings, but I'm so happy that this is continue. We need to nurture this award, right? And Ho'onani Hula Warrior is actually included in one of our Conscious Child book kits. But this is why we need to encourage publishers to really publish books that we know need to be written, that need to be in our collections, and that we have a way to advocate for that. I just want to give a plug to this newly published book called Kala Boy's Adventure to Make Pono, He Hua Ka'i Ohana. And I was privileged to be invited to preview this book and contribute feedback. I did not write this book. It was a collaborative effort with Ho'oi Kaika Partnership, which, speaking of partnerships, these are the people that I want to be involved with because they are advocates. They're a coalition of community-based organizations, individuals, county and state agencies committed to preventing child abuse and neglect in Maui County. So I've met so many people, from Child and Family Services, Child Welfare Services, Maui Family Support Services, who has a early literacy coordinator, which for sure is in our wheelhouse. Imua Family Services, Friends of the Children's Justice Center of Maui. So these are all examples of people that are part of this partnership. And I want the Hawaii State Public Library System to also be part of this officially. And I'm sure there's iterations of these types of coalitions throughout the state. I encourage you to reach out to the people that we need to know each other. We need to know each other and connect. And the book was illustrated by the very talented Solomon Enos and was funded by the Hawaii Department of Health. So these are getting printed, and I am working to introduce them into our collections, perhaps. It really lends itself to a giveaway situation. So it's such a great book because it also has these kilo observe boxes where you can encourage a caregiver to ask questions, right? Which is like dialogic reading, where we're trying to encourage conversation and interaction with a book. And then the purple boxes ask about emotions. So if I'd known this book was available when I was making the next kits I'm going to talk about, then I would have gone for it. And I want to share more about that later. So if you're interested in more information about this book, you can contact me. Okay, so the themes that are featured in the Conscious Child books are identity and belonging, joy and self-love, solidarity and activism, and immigration and refugees. So thank you so much. I think Kau'i for sure was one of the people that helped with these book lists. And it was just wonderful to work collaboratively and have these. And these are available. They're hyperlinked on the website. And then I won't read all the quotes, but I feel like encouraged by them. There's some good feedback on these. And the point of the feedback was that it really, for parents and caregivers that used it, it sparked conversation. And that's really what I think literature, one of its main purposes is to really have a safe space in which to discuss topics that may be daunting, right? Or seem overwhelming. And literature and reading with a safe person in a safe space is so critical. So we had some really good feedback there. Okay, I'm going to speed through this a little bit because you can actually see more detail in the link that I actually already put in the chat about Growing My Garden Keiki Self-Care Toolkits. This is an example of synchronicity, I guess is the word, because I was so delved into this world of self-care and professionally, how can we take care of ourselves and how can we take care of our children? And I was inspired by Mental Health America of Hawaii's Dr. Misty Sagas, who was doing Keiki Self-Care Toolkit webinars. And I went to one of her webinars and she started like, it was fabulous. And she talked about books. And I'm like, I'm a librarian. I love books. Can we connect? And we did. And the result of this and funding from the Maui Friends of the Library are these toolkits. And really the basis of them, one of the inspirations was Thich Nhat Hanh, the idea, just an incredible Vietnamese Buddhist monk and activist. But the seed of this idea was the healthy garden of the mind, using the garden as a metaphor for our well-being. And so he says every one of us already has the seed of mindfulness. The practice is to cultivate it. And so the idea came about. Tammy Ching and I here at Wailuku Library collaborated with Dr. Goss at Mental Health America. And you can actually view the YouTube video. I was asked to help guest speak at one of her self-care sessions and the printables. And that was the key because she has amazing coloring sheets and handouts that we ended up incorporating into the book kits. So this is what it looks like. It's this lovely bag. There's a take-home packet with worksheets and activity cards, which you get to keep. And we got funding from the Friends to buy these little boxes that children can decorate and put their activity cards in, and anything that helps to soothe them or remind them that to take care of themselves. And they come with these discussion cards and further recommended reading and the books. So you can view the link in the chat and it'll be in the slides. And there are 4 themes: soil, air, water, and sunshine. So these book lists are posted on the website at the link I provided. And then example of soil, for example, we talk about the theme, nourishing a foundation for seeds to grow, recognizing our own emotions builds the foundation for us to grow and manage them. And then it really talks more about techniques for grounding, mindfulness, and meditation. And these are the books that we selected for the kit. So they're a combination. We tried to choose story books that have a story, but also, there's some nonfiction titles in there. And then the activity cards look like these. And every theme has its own activity cards. And then the toolboxes, we found, this wasn't as cheap as I would have liked, but they're really cute pencil boxes you can decorate. But you can also encourage them to choose any kind of a container that inspires them. And one of our Wailuku Library staff members made this lovely self-care box. And the feedback so far has been really great. We've had even kids come up because the novelty of a bag, checking out a bag is really fun for them. But yeah, parents are really thrilled with it. So the takeaway from all of this, some questions to consider, what are ways you connect or want to connect with the people you work with, individuals and communities you serve. And then if you want to reflect back or have already on how the last few years have affected your understanding, perceptions, and beliefs about yourself and your profession. And most importantly, what's most sustaining for me is what inspires you in your job, what lights you up. And then my goal going forward is considering this question: how can we center wellness in the workplace, in our personal lives, and within our communities, and sustain solidarity in our profession? Of course, I did my due diligence. I share this slide with groups that might not know about our databases, which I'm sure you all do, but there's so many great articles on picture books and emotional literacy, promoting social emotional learning. There's so much out there, and it really bolstered the project for me. And then I share this screen just to say that, there are opportunities within our community, as I'm sure you all know, we're doing the same things, right? We have the same goals. How can we work together? and stay in touch. All right, that's it. I think I have some time for questions and discussion. This is my email. You can visit the Bookmobile page to see our schedule and a YouTube video. And I just want to end with this lovely illustration of Lahaina Library created by Makwal manager Dakota Cotton. And she shared this lovely coloring sheet that we've been giving out to people. The bookmobile is going out to the West Side. And we lost this library. And it's, you know, libraries are places where we find ourselves. And I just wanted to end too with a quote from Eric Kleinenberg, who wrote Palaces for the People, how social infrastructure can help fight inequality, polarization, and the decline of civic life. And he says that libraries are the kinds of places where ordinary people with different backgrounds, passions, and interests can take part in a living democratic culture. They're the kinds of places where the public, private, and philanthropic sectors can work together to reach for something higher than the bottom line. So with all that being said, I hope all of that made sense. It was a lot of information, but it's just meant to be a conversation starter, right? To get us to clarify and remember our limitations, but not be discouraged. So that's where I seek solidarity among all of you. So if you have questions, comments, unmute. I think we have, how much time do we have, Kylie?
We have 6 minutes, if my
6
math.
minutes. Any questions or comments?
I have a question. Hi.
Hi.
I was just curious, the Keiki self-care kits, do you have thoughts on expanding? Are you going to do other kits after this? What's your thoughts?
Danielle, I want to expand them.
Of course you do. Yeah.
But I have to understand my limitations, you know, right?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the book that you were helping with, if that's something you were thinking about doing more kits on different topics
yes.
or yeah, okay.
I do have to share though, one of the feedback questions I asked the people who used our kits, you know, what are some other topics that you would be interested in having a kit about? And they said more Hawaiian activism and solidarity books for kids, Hawaiian culture for non-Hawaiians who moved to Hawaii, respect of science, which was probably during those dark years, sorry, political commentary, gender topics, animal welfare, culture-based themes, belonging, emotional intelligence, and understanding for Keiki, homelessness, what is culture, types of culture, and positive relationships with fathers, mothers, siblings, family. So like, you know, these are people that are motivated to use the kits for sure. And kits are fun. They take a lot of work, but they're fun. So yes.
Awesome. Those are all really cool topics. I'm
right?
really excited to see what you come up with. There's some of those. That sounds really great.
Yeah.
I see Jennifer's hands up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good to see you again.
Hi, good to see you too.
But I had a question about like the technical aspect of it because these aren't in like Horizon or searchable in our public catalog, right? Are these only available in Branch? They are.
They are.
Okay.
But
you just can't request it if you're off island.
Well, that was the agreement that we came to, is it's a special program or SPR code, special programming. And so it's not requestable just because, I mean, I would love it to be, but I would rather have like every island. I'm making more kits. And so they are in Horizon, they're cataloged. So if you want to be one of those libraries, you have to convince your circ staff that it's okay because it has a bag and books and there's a take home part and you got to refill it when it comes back. So like there's extra steps, but if you get buy-in from your circ staff, that, you know, it's a special thing. I want to circulate more things like that, you know, that incorporate early literacy themes like talking, reading, playing, writing. There's so many possibilities, and this is just one of them. So,
Do you generally have problems with pieces like
Mm,
missing books or things like that, or are they pretty much
sometimes
the users are pretty responsible
generally
and
pretty
bring back
good. And then
everything?
I don't freak out when stuff doesn't, we try to retrieve it, but you know, and I put a cost on it, but it's fully funded by grants, and you know, we just try to get the books back. And I do have some extra copies so we can replenish. But overall, we did lose a lot of them in the fires because
Yeah.
Lahaina Library was one of the, Chad and I were collaborating. So all of that, if it was in the library, is gone. And then, you know, people just lost a lot in that fire. So, but we still have kits, and I have additional funding to buy more books, which I'm starting to use up. So I'm thinking like you and Kauai and maybe Taryn um, on Oahu, and then Michelle Young on Kauai. If any of you are inclined to want to carry these, that would be a solution on your island, maybe to have them physically. But everything, the content is all online. So you can like, if people wanted to print it or request the books from the book kits, they could.
Right. They can kind of like make their own kit with
Yeah.
the book because they're all available in system at multiple branches. Okay.
But it's so much funner and easier to check out a
Have it already
bag.
there.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thanks, Jessica.
sure. Well, thank you for the comments. Yeah, I could, anybody that's interested, really, this is what floats my boat. And if it floats your boat, I know we're all busy, but you can reach out to me. Yeah.